In Moddio, we have something called entities. But what are entities? Entities are objects in your game. They can be characters, weapons, bullets, or even rocks. Think of them as Lego bricks. You combine them to build your game's logic. And we have a few types of entities here. The first type is an item. Think of an item as a subtype of entities. We also have projectiles, units, and props. A unit is like a character you control. An item is like a tool you use, and a projectile is like a temporary action, like attacks, and a prop is usually a static world object, like a tree. Items are entities that you interact with, weapons that deal damage, consumables that grant effects, and unusable items that are something to add flavor to your game, like decorative rocks. We have unusable items, rotating weapons, consumables, ranged weapons, and melee weapons. These are all the options we get to create one of these inside of Moddio. For this example, what we're going to do is go to our items and create a consumable item. We can hit the ... hit new, and go to new item. We can create a new consumable right here, like so. Let's say I wanted to create a coin for my game. We'll upload a coin sheet by searching up coin and uploading whichever one we'd like. Now in our coin or our item settings here, we have a few options. Now the first thing that we might actually want to do is can be used by. Here we will set this can be used by survivor. This is our player in our game. Next, you can take a look at the other settings inside of these as well. One of the important ones would be the bonus, where when I consume something, what happens? Well, here it's going to give my unit attribute health. And that is because if I save this and go to my survivor, my player has health over here as the attribute. Now, in my game, in order to add these coins into my game here, I'm simply going to add them using the entities tool as a quick way of doing this, quick and dirty. We'll add a few over here. We'll republish so they show up. And let's take some damage. All right, we took some damage. We can now go over here, pick up our coins by pressing E. And we can select our coin and use it. And you can see that I gained some health. And there we go. That is how we create a consumable. Now, projectiles are short-lived entities for combat or effects. They're like bullets that move fast, explosives that deal area damage, or stationary ones that act like traps. The options we get when we create a projectile is a stationary effect, an explosive bullet, a collider object, or something at constant speed. Each of these have their own use cases. All right, now as a small example in Moddio, to create a projectile, we need two things. We need the actual projectile and a weapon to fire that projectile. So the first thing we would need to do is actually create a projectile. Here I've created a bullet, but let's go over how we would actually do that. We would go to projectile in new and create a constant speed because we want a bullet. Here we would simply need to rename this to bullet. Here I'll say bullet 2, and that is it. There are some other things that you could check out, some extra effects and general, but generally speaking, this is it. Now, where the magic actually happens is the gun. Here I've created a gun, but let's go over how we would do that. We would simply go to item because we want an item gun. We want a ranged weapon. The main difference here is that if we go into the weapons tab, we can see that type is selected as ranged. And now in the projectile type, we can select either blood, bullet, or bullet 2. Now we can select bullet 2 because that's the one we just made. And that is basically it. That is all we need. You can select the sprite sheet, you can give it a name, you can give it a type, etc. There are a few extra settings that you might want to play around with. Some of these, like for example, on use, the tween is pretty useful. This is a recoil. So what this does is it kind of makes the gun go boop, 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 up and down, recoil. That's what tween is. So it'll kind of make it tween differently if you select other ones. So yeah, play around with some of these if you have on destroy, on create, etc. So we can hit save and apply. Now what you would need to do extra wise is actually give the player a gun. So here you can see I gave my player the other gun. And if we go to save and apply, you might have to republish. And then once you have republished, you will have your gun. And you can see here that I can start shooting things at my game, at my pigs and my boars and pigs and stuff. And yeah, that's it for this example. So let's go on to the next. The units are entities that are usually controlled by players or AI. Now, Moddio provides templates like top-down units that rotate to your mouse by default, a player platformer unit where the sprite flips left and right, and lastly, a collider object similar to the projectile, but this is more for objects that we want to act as a unit. All right, so let's say we want to create a new unit, maybe a AI like a pig, but does something slightly different. I don't know. Now let's go to the Units tab. We'll click New and Unit, and we have 3 options. For this game, we have a top-down game, so we'll pick a top-down unit. Now, to create an AI unit, this is actually pretty simple. All we need to do is go to AI and set it to true. We can change some of these settings. So let's say the idle behavior, we want it to wander, and then for this, we want it to flee. The attack range, you can change all these, the flee distance. Obviously, the attack range might not do anything because this guy just flees. He doesn't actually attack. But yeah, that's basically it. Maybe for the sensor radius, we can set this to 150. This you can also change if you'd like. But hostile units, you would need to set as a relationship inside of here. So here we can see that we have AI hostile. These guys will need to be hostile to each other. You would need to set the relationship to each other. All right. Now that would be a different video, but I do recommend you check that out. Now, obviously, in controls for our unit, we don't need any of these, so we can just delete those. For effects, you can check these out. But similarly, these would do certain things on idle, on move. If you want to play a certain animation, that would probably be good. For this, I'm just going to use the default, whatever this is. And then camera, we can keep that on disabled. And that should be it. So additionally, of course, you can also set the speed and health. And then obviously for the inventory size, you can just put 1. It doesn't need an inventory. So let's save. And what we'll do to add this to our game is I'll add it through code in our world script. We can go to spawn creeps. And here I've just added this where while number of units of instead of undefined, we'll change that to our new unit here. To new unit, hit OK. And then here we'll create the undefined new unit. Now, when we close this, hit save and apply. And then we might need to republish. So let's do that. And now we see our little new units have spawned and they are just wandering. And if I get close, they should start fleeing. Awesome. And I'm being attacked by a bear now. And that's it. That's it for our units example. So I'll see you guys in the props. Now, the last thing we have, very simple, props. There's only one subtype for this, which is just a basic prop. This is usually used for things like trees that we don't really care about to interact, or maybe a rock. They don't have any crazy use. We don't mind them or anything. They're just there to have as a prop. All right, so the last thing we need is a prop. Now, by default, we don't have props folder, so we can just create one by creating a new folder and saying props. We'll create it. And now here in our props folder, we can create a new prop and simply give it a basic shape. Here we can upload anything we'd like. Now by default, there is no results found for the image, so we can upload something random. Now I've added a black sheet here. It's nothing pretty, but it'll work for our example. Now, ideally, you would add your props through code. Using the previous example, you can simply spawn these in, either using a while loop, or you can take a look at the initialization. There's here a repeat below 8 times. You can create trees like this. You can create the prop that we just made, or we can add them in manually using our map. So here, I'm just going to go to my map, go to new prop, and I can just add these in. You can see that these work just fine. And that's basically it. So you can add the entities tool through the entities tool into our map. And that's it. So when I hit play, you may not see them, so we may have to republish. So let's republish and take a look. All right, so here we go. We now have our little props. We just walk right through them. which is exactly what we want. So there we go. That's our props for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the sub button down below, and I hope to see you guys in the next tutorial. If you guys have any tutorial requests, definitely comment down below what you guys would like to see next.